Hello and welcome, guys. We are here at Serene Balance Productions doing a quick interview with Sebastian. Now, Sebastian, as you guys may or may not know, he TOs a lot in the SoCal area, is very well known for SoCal GA related things, but also he just came back from the European Nationals where you placed, I believe, fifth place, right?
I got six. I got the lowest
Whoa.
gauntlet slot I possibly could have gotten.
But still a W either way. Getting the gauntlet slot is important, especially in a region that's not your home region, right? Being able to get that slot and then still have the opportunity to play at Oceania Nationals, should you choose to, or any nationals to try to find that world spot.
Uh, yeah. I wouldn't have gone if I wasn't at least a little confident that I could have gotten at least a gauntlet slot. From SoCal. So I justified. I wanted to go to at least three Nats just so I can get a gauntlet slot and go like, man, I don't have to pay for any travel if I just make gauntlet. So I did what I said I wanted to do, which was at least get a gauntlet slot.
Yeah, and big congratulations to you on that. So, like you said, you don't have to travel. So we do know that Ascent Worlds is going to be held in Anaheim, which would be a lot closer for you than, let's say, if it was held in Dusseldorf or in Taipei or Singapore or something like that. So I guess that covers why you wanted to go to EU Nationals. If you could have chosen any of them, I know it's a little difficult because of things like school and travel costs and stuff. Was EU the one you wanted to go to the most, or would you have rather have gone to Oceania or Southeast Asia?
EU's pretty good. I go a decent amount because I have family there. So Düsseldorf specifically is the city that I go to a lot because there's family there. So I'm pretty comfortable just going there a lot. Taipei would have been nice to go to. I'm not sure what there is to do in OCE, to be honest.
Halal snack pack. That's the only thing I know about OCE that everyone talks about all the time. They're like, you need a halal snack pack. And I'm like, one day it'll get tried if we ever make it down there. But yeah, so you went to EU, you got sixth place. So I believe, if I recall correctly, there were, I think, 63 players. It was still an 8-round event due to being a nationals. So it was 8 rounds of Swiss Day 1, 4 rounds of Swiss Day 2, with the caveat that if you wanted to make Day 2, you needed to have at least 16 points. Now, normally we see in an Ascent format, it's fairly easy to find these amount of points. A lot of games will be won or lost, and there's lots of rounds, lots of different opponents you're playing against. However, at European Nationals, since there weren't that many players, it was a lot tighter of a matchup, right? I believe only 12 people made it to Day 2, you being one of them, and alongside, I think, 3 other North American players. How did you feel about the decks that were played at EU Nationals?
Uh, Actually, a little bit more diverse than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be just a lot of just random Wind Ally players, just because that's what Henke's known for playing there. And a lot of people I thought would have taken after him. Hindsight, I should have looked at the regional that happened pretty recently back there. There was a decent amount of Tristan players, and I probably could have taken that more into account. But I thought there would be a lot more people than 63 as well too. Uh, I probably estimated there'd be at least 100, so 63 actually threw me hella off. I did play a decent spread of what I thought would have been there. It's just, I think, 2 Tristans. I think I played 2 Fractals and 2 Wind Allies, which I did see Wind Allies coming, but was decently even, honestly. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, the size of EU Nationals is definitely something that I think a lot of people were not expecting to be so tight. Again, one of the bigger reasons Ascent Kuala Lumpur is the same weekend. That was a massive event, the biggest event that GA has had so far. Over 400 people competing there. So it did pull away a couple of the better players. Some people value playing at the Ascent, going to the Ascent, trying to find the trophy cards from that versus like working towards your Worlds invites or things like that. So, I mean, I guess all the people who qualified at SEA Nats also probably were like, I don't need to go to EU now. I can just go to Kuala Lumpur and have a good time, and it's closer. So that is also a factor. When it comes to like decks, you talk about the things you played against. It was an even spread. I believe you were the only player there on Win Luxem, or at least you were definitely the only player at the top tables that played Win Luxem. And a lot of people, I want to say a lot of people were shocked at the deck in general, but also not so much because it was played quite a bit at Seattle as well as at SEA Nats. Jet did manage to qualify that, and then Peter Emp getting 5th place there definitely puts the deck more on the radar. Did you feel like people were really prepared for Winlux, or still like very uncertain how to play into it?
If I'm completely honest, I actually have no idea if people were prepared or not. The deck is really hard to play, and the only reason I actually did remotely good was because I knew Jet and Peter, so they were able to teach me a lot. I feel without those two, I would be completely lost with that deck. Like, I think shoutouts to Christian Ducats. He tested insane amount of hours with me the last 2 weeks before UNets, and I think without any input for those two either, I would have just like scrubbed completely out. The deck is really hard to pilot as just a player as well too. I think if someone else is randomly picking up, they would get literally nowhere. Uh, you might get some people because they also don't know what you're doing. That's because the deck isn't that prevalent either. Because people that test it out, they try, they go like, man, I have no idea what to do with this. I'm just not even gonna try. I'm gonna play like water fractals or like just wind allies.
Yeah, it's definitely less straightforward. I did have the opportunity to test with Peter and Jet as well in SEA Nat since we all went to that event together. I felt the same way. I felt the exact same way. I picked up the deck a week or two before we went to SEA Nats. I played it a lot, and I was like, I have no clue how I'm supposed to play this. And I learned that the fundamental difference of this deck is that like it breaks the concepts of how people think about GA. Right? People think about GA and they apply concepts and terms from other games, and it doesn't really apply to this deck. This deck is something very unique in its philosophy, as well as like we I would like to say we, because all of us have played it so much and we've kind of put our input towards it, but like it's a deck that you really don't know what's going to happen until it just immediately happens, right? And that's the scariest part for me about the deck is when someone's playing Win Luxem against me, there's so many more things you have to calculate for lethal, and there's so many more avenues you have to look at and say like, do I have a way to defend myself, right? You can get 0 to 25 like pretty easily if you don't really know what the setup looks like. So, if you feel like people weren't really sure about the deck, I guess my question for you for that is like, do you feel like you should have done better on the deck than you did?
Uh, I feel like given the amount of time that I had, I did pretty good. I was in between Winluxem. I was talking with Steven TTA about thinking about Genbu. I think I was split between those two because I tried Water Fractals. I didn't really like how it played personally. The deck is good. I played against Terry twice, and both times he gave me a rough time. The game I played against him day two was not a real game. That I like beat him 1-0, but like neither of us knew what in the world happened that game. I think I ended up killing him with just like 1-1s, just like because it got to that point where neither of us could see anything. So like, all right, swing you for one pass, and like just multiple times over and over again. So Water Fractals isn't a bad deck either. If I liked how it played personally and it meshed better with how I played the game, I probably would have brought it. But for me, it was probably Winluxem or Genbu. I just had more experience with Winluxem too, because I played it a few times before, like Peter and Jeff brought it to Seattle. So that's probably the biggest reason why I brought it, just because I've had at least a little more experience. Also, Genbu is probably still working on a deck list. I think I decided maybe like a week before. So I was like, okay, cool. And that is no time to like figure out the Genbu and like the deck list at the same time.
Awesome. So I guess in terms of deck lists, we talk about you were thinking about fractals, you were thinking about Genbu, you were thinking about Winlux. You kind of narrowed it down to not really enjoying the play style of fractals. What would you say are the best decks in the format right now? Top 5 best decks in order. What do you think is the
Uh,
best to worst? In like the better of them. Like obviously if there's something like you think like Faiza's not good enough, you just don't even include it, for example.
I don't really think there's a best deck. I think it's just a spread of decks that are viable.
Okay, what about top 5 decks,
Uh,
no particular order? That's probably a
on
little more reasonable to ask.
off the top of my head, is like very generically just Jiaoqian Fractals is pretty good. Uh, and either Fire or Wind Luxem is pretty good too. Uh, Wind Ari, the Astral Ari is pretty good, and then just any type of uh Wind allies or Water allies I think might be good too, but mostly Wind allies because they have the fractal hit.
Yeah, sounds about right. It that kind of matches up pretty consistently with what we've seen in terms of results. I think the only thing that stands out separate from that would be people who are playing the aggro rebuke Diao-Chan Fire as well as like aggro Fire Lorraine. I think those are the only other two decks that like stand out that have good results but aren't necessarily considered top decks right now.
Yeah, I mean that's I I think some people don't like this format. I kind of like this format because I genuinely like widespread formats where you can kind of get away with playing anything you want. And even those top decks aren't even the best decks. You could probably play something else and you could probably like just body a bunch of people and then they'll never see it coming.
Yeah, it's interesting because I personally like formats like this. I feel like this is a really really high skill cap format. I think that showing like being able to play a deck that isn't necessarily very good in the overall spread and still perform well with it shows like high skill to me. Obviously, some people could argue that like you're just high rolling a lot, but if you're doing it consistently across multiple events, maybe that's not the case, right? Like we look at players like Jimmy Lee. Jimmy Lee can bring any fire like he can bring Fire Lorraine to any event and still like day two every event. And it sometimes that just makes no sense to me, but he manages to do it. So it makes me think that if you understand a deck and the fundamentals of a deck, you can get a little lucky with matchmaking, you get a little lucky with your draws, but at the end of the day, like the skill of the skill of the player actually does still matter a lot.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I mean, it does make sense because you see a lot of people consistently at least day two or in the top eight. I mean, Sean's done quite a lot. I think, does he have the most spirits out of everybody? He does, right?
Sean or Caven? I think Caven might have one more, but that's because
Kevin might. Yeah, Kevin might.
Sean went
Yeah.
to two less events, I think, because he missed a flight to Christchurch, and he there was one other one I'm thinking of. I can't remember.
Yeah. But it definitely says a lot if those two people are definitely doing very
Mm-hmm.
consistently, and there hasn't exactly been just one type of deck they've been playing either. They each have like a wide spread of decks that they've played.
That's true. That's true. There's a lot of different things. Like originally, it was the like Caven's actually played a ton of different things, right? He's gone from being like very much known as the allies player to playing Rye to then playing slimes, and then after the slimes, it was like playing fractals. So like he's really played almost every archetype. I think outside of like control. I think control is probably the only archetype that he hasn't really played that much. Because even when like Tristan was around, he played like a more aggressive allies focused version of Tristan.
I mean, he's playing water fractals right now. You could argue that's technically a little control.
It is a little controlling. I think it's definitely feels more of like a combo deck, but I I understand what you mean. I understand. For me, when I think of control, I'm thinking of like Luxem, for example, like Luxem style decks, or like even I really want to say Merlin because I think that's the only way you can play Merlin right now, but I don't know if that's necessarily true either.
I
Uh,
mean, if it's blue, at least has a little control.
it's true. It's true. It's true. There's always a little bit of control with blue. Okay, so we've talked about why you went to EU. We talked about the decks. We've talked about player skill and stuff like that. Something I actually am curious about, and this is more for me personally. I'm not sure how interested the viewers will be in this, but how did you feel about the event itself? The venue, the way things were communicated, the staff, production, like the stream, everything like this. You can be as honest as you want. Probably don't be like too toxic if there's anything that you really didn't like, but you can stress things in ways because I feel like talking about these things is really important, right? Feedback for events is really important, and a lot of people aren't willing to give it or don't have a platform to give it. So I'm trying to give you that opportunity, I guess, right now.
Uh, Personally, I think the event was actually run pretty fine. I know CS International has experience with running One Piece events before, so I'm assuming if they're still running One Piece right now, Bondi at least has a little confidence in them. Just from like how I know events are run here in SoCal. Uh, I do wish it was a little more clear on what was going on because we did get, I think, just an information email maybe a day or two before, and it was just a bunch of schedules and stuff. But I know a lot of people, including me, were a bit confused about what time things would start. Uh, Overall, the event ran pretty smoothly. Herman's definitely a really good head judge.
Shout out to
Shout
Herman,
out to him.
fellow Canadian.
Uh, Theo was there too. Everything did run pretty smoothly. As far as I know, there weren't any hiccups, and CS definitely knows what they're doing a little bit. They were also coordinating some stuff, the hiccups with Utrecht, so at least they're trying to get their stuff together and fix the mistakes that they have made.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I'm glad overall, things were good in that regard. Did you feel like there was anything that you would have liked to have seen better in terms of, I guess, like the venue or the setup or anything like that? Like anything that was
I
like
think
jarringly like, hey, this is like a really big deal or needs to be improved?
not really, honestly. The venue definitely threw me off. I think it was just like a random office building, but given the size that they expected, it's definitely very fitting. I
Mm-hmm.
think just like me, they probably expected roughly maybe 100 people, but they probably have better numbers with pre-reg numbers and all that stuff. So assuming if they want more people, they would have upgraded, but they probably picked the venue way beforehand. And if pre-reg numbers didn't overshow expectations, they've probably just stuck with the venue. So yeah, I think it's pretty good for
Yeah,
at least for how big the event was.
I mean that's good. That sounds like EU Nationals was like a pretty solid event, and like you could genuinely say this was a successful event, well run, well rounded compared to other things that have happened in the past. Like because you were at Utrecht as well, right? A lot of things went wrong in Utrecht, but it kind of can happen anywhere, right? We've had events happen in NA that have gone like horribly wrong, right? Like
Yeah,
the very first ascent with Ascent Houston, they had backups on backups and all the software crashed at the same time. So that was like an awful experience for some people. But
yeah.
it's good to see like as we go into year two that things have been getting better and more consistent.
It is CS's like second time running a tournament, so overall pretty good. Utrecht was their first one, if I know correctly. I'm not exactly sure, but it was their first time, so it's granted that they'll make mistakes just because any new game, at least starting out, you don't know exactly how the developers of that game want it run. So you're
Mhm.
trying to like attune your staff to that and trying to figure things out as well too. Because normally some things you can get away with in like Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or One Piece that you can't get away with in Grand Archive, and vice versa. You can get away some stuff in Grand Archive, but that would never slide in like One Piece or Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I always forget that you're like very well versed in other games as well. Being someone who, works in a card shop, you do understand how like events work, and also you judge a lot, if I recall, for Yu-Gi-Oh. So you kind of have a
Yep.
lot of experience in different fields with that. I guess the last thing is just like anything that you want to say, anything that you want to talk about, any shout outs you want to give out.
Mm, Not really. Shoutouts to everyone that helped me for EU prep. Steven and Christian from NorCal, Steven, Christian, Sean, everyone in TM32. They supported me through that. And shoutouts to everyone also in SoCal. Jet, Peter, everyone else that's here too, just giving me advice with the deck. Off the top of my head, Yotin, Jason, everybody from SoCal. Really good community down here. And then everybody's very supportive of each other. And they've definitely helped me. I would not have done as good as I ever have in any of the tournaments without anybody here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you so much for joining us again. This is Sebastian from TM32. He did place sixth at the European Nationals, which means he has a guaranteed locked-in gauntlet spot. Hopefully, we'll be seeing him compete for a world spot at the NA Nationals. We'll see that in a couple weeks here. Actually, it's coming up pretty close. It's like what, 3 weeks from now? That's exciting, maybe nerve-wracking for some, but yeah, if you guys have any questions for me or Sebastian, make sure to leave them in the comments below. If there's any questions directly for him and he doesn't see it, I'll probably just ask him so I can respond to you guys. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.